Welcome to the Big E. My name is Jasmine, and this is the place where we explore, we experience, and we enjoy our life. As I say, if you are not, change your experience. Do something different to change the outcome and the world around you. Today I'd like to talk about keeping yourself in fear or communicating your fear. Stay with me. Today I want to share a little bit about fear. There are so many ways as humans, as us in this biology, in this form, that we can keep ourselves in fear. The positive, powerful way to change this is to communicate our fear. Now, it's not easy, and I'm aware of that. I wanted to share a little of my story of how I started to shift into this. To want to talk about your fear, we have to go through these feelings of embarrassment, shame, guilt, and am I worthy enough to share it? Am I worthy enough for anyone to want to hear my story? Is it important enough? And I'm here to tell you, it's important enough because you are here. You are here for a reason. You are working through this issue of fear for a reason. And the power of working through an experience, no matter what it is why not share it so others can learn from us, so that others can understand. I've said this so many times, to understand we are not alone. We are not in this situation by ourselves. There are others that are here going through the same thing as we are. So do you keep yourself in fear or do you communicate your fear? Mine started way back when I was a child. It was from my environment. I had low self-esteem. I was raised a certain way, but not even to go to that. I remember when I was about 18 or 19 years old, I started to I paid attention to some of my words, and I realized I was always referring back to my childhood, when I was abused, when I was hurt, and I always leaned on that. That was a crutch for me to not move forward because I could blame that, my childhood and my abuse. So my fear started to show up when I realized what would happen if I wanted to do away with that crutch. If I wanted to put my crutches down and say, okay, I own my life. I no longer am a child. But what would I have to look at? What would I have to face in realizing that I identified with that? Without that identification, who was I? And my fear was I really wasn't much in the aspect of I didn't know myself. I didn't know what I wanted, why I felt a certain way, why I communicated a certain way. My whole thing when I was a child is I used to lie. Someone would ask me something and I would say, no, I didn't tell on you. No, I didn't tell that person. Because I was this, like I said in the last show, this little willow in the wind. I would agree with one person, and then if another person showed up and they had a contradictory idea, I would agree with them, even though I just agreed with this person. Then, as my friends would ask me, well, did you tell this person my secrets? Did you tell this person what I just said? And no, I support you 100%. I started to see how I didn't have a clue who I was. I didn't know what I believed in. I didn't know how I felt. And my whole thing when I was a child was lying. This was a pattern that I did quite a bit. There was a very shocking situation that one time even came to where my father asked me if I ate all my food. Back in the day in my childhood and my parents' generation is you stayed at the table until you ate everything on your plate. No choices, no alternatives. My parents cooked a lot of liver back in the day and kale with those little potatoes that were in it, or onions. No, I think they were potatoes. And anyway, so we always had to clean our plate. And I was done. I was done with the kale. I love the liver. I think even a few times I ate my sister's liver because I loved it. Liver and onions. And I think maybe they took my kale. I'm not sure. But the kale was just like, seriously, I got tired of it. I got tired of having to eat it. So my dad had asked me one night if I finished my kale. And I told my dad, yeah, I finished it. It's all gone. Well, what I had done is I had wrapped it in a napkin, took the napkin and threw it in the trash. And of course, my dad found out, took me very privately into his office and asked me again. And I said, yes, I finished my kale. Well, I'm not quite sure why I'm going to share this. It was a bit extreme. It was a lot of fear. And maybe I'm communicating my fear so that I don't live in the fear of this situation. But he called me to his office, very privately, just me and him. He told me to kneel down. I kneeled down. My father was a pastor, so I figured we were going to pray. I thought maybe I was going to be praying for something. I don't know. But I kneeled on the floor, and my dad told me he had picked up a knife, and he told me to stick out my tongue. And I remember watching him going, why? But with my generation or with my family and my environment, you didn't ask why. You did not have a voice. You just did what you were told. So I started to stick out my tongue, and my dad grabbed it and pretended like he was going to cut it off. And I was in so much fear. I started to cry. I knew I couldn't put my tongue back into my mouth. My dad would just beat the shit out of me because I was how I understood I was dishonoring what he asked me to do. So I kept my tongue stuck out. My dad laid the knife on my tongue, and I was bawling my head off. And I think I even closed my eyes like, oh my God, what's going on? Oh, I'm going to lose my tongue. I'm never going to be able to talk again. And then he stopped. And then he asked me again, did you eat all of your kale? And of course I'm crying, I'm bawling. And I said, no, I put it in the trash. I put it in the napkin. I lied. And I don't think I said I lied, but I told him exactly what I did and how I got rid of the kale. Well, that ended that session. Did I ever tell anybody that? I might have shared that once in my life, and I think this is the second time that I've really ever shared that story. I don't know if my sisters knew that happened to me. I felt so much shame around the lying and the guilt. I don't think I ever shared that story. So it was horrific. It was, to me now, it was unnecessary. But how do you discipline your children when there's a pattern that keeps repeating and you're trying to help them and support them in being healthy adults, thriving adults? So my father did the best he could do. Maybe he felt he needed to scare me into reality. Well, it didn't quite work. As I got much older, probably around my early 20s, my dad again would still divulge to me things that about my sisters and how he felt and different things. My sisters were not living at home, but I still was. About 20, 21 years old, I was still living with my father and my second stepmother. So he would still trust me and talk to me and complain to me and kind of bitch to me about my siblings. So one time I remember we were walking into the house, and he looked at me and he goes, oh, by the way, have you told your sisters what I've told you? And I said, no, I'm good. But I remember one instance when I was getting tired of this. And so to call my dad out, like, seriously, you're telling me shit about my siblings? For God's sake, I'm your daughter. I'm a girl. I'm a child. Well, at 22, not quite a child. I was a bit still immature and naive. But one time we were sitting at the table. My stepmother was sitting next to me, and she was such a strong woman. She supported me in ways that I had never known and I was not used to. She validated in me something about that I was okay. I was an individual. I had a place. I had a part. I was someone. So my dad was sitting at the table, and he again started to talk or something. Then he kind of looked at me and goes, oh, by the way, have you been telling your sisters what I've said? I looked at my stepmother and I smiled. I looked at my dad and I said, yes, I have. So I advise, if you do not want them to know something, I'm going to let you know now. Don't tell me, because I will tell them. Oh, he almost wanted to raise his hand and slap the holy out of me. After my father got over the fury of wanting to beat me to death, I remember I looked over at him and he just looked at me. I think for the first time he saw that I was standing up and owning who I was. I did not have shame that I was telling my sisters at this point. I was just done with his bullshit. I was done with, okay, you need to stop telling me things because now I'm going to tell you who I am. I will tell my sisters. So he basically did. He stopped that pattern in me. So I faced my fear. I communicated with my father what I was doing. I dropped the guilt. I dropped the shame. I didn't want to stay in that fear of my father. And this was the big thing I had to climb out of many years following this instance, even inside myself, to climb out of the fear of my father, how he saw me, what he thought of me, his opinions, just trying to release that it even mattered. Who I was, what I said, I owned it. So I started to become my own identity, my own feelings, my own knowing. It was a slow process. It took quite a few years and a lot of different experiences, not necessarily just with my father, but experiences with men. I played out a pattern of other men that I attracted in my life, needing their confirmation, needing their approval. I had to really work through that. It didn't matter because some of the men were just controlling me. What they said didn't resonate with me. I didn't want to do it that way. I didn't want to be that person. No, that's not who I am. So it took some years in these men and that pattern repeating until I realized, facing the fear of, maybe I don't know who I am, but I'm going to try it out. I'm going to walk that walk. I'm going to talk that talk. And I'm going to figure out if I like what I'm saying. I'm going to figure out, do I like who I am, what I'm presenting? No? Fine. It's okay. Don't go back into the guilt. Don't go back into the shame. Say, okay, let's change it. I didn't like how that felt, so let's change it. Let's change how we act. Let's change what we're saying. If it doesn't feel good, don't go into shame. Don't block and lock yourself into the fear of how it feels from a past experience, your childhood, someone who tried to control you, someone who used fear to make you feel small so that you didn't step up into your power. I remember thinking, okay, I own that one. Okay, didn't like that one at all. Oh, no, that didn't feel so good. So I'm going to change it. Sometimes I made amends to people that it didn't feel good to. I didn't stay in the shame or the fear. I just went to that person. I said, okay, I want to apologize for my heart. That did not feel good when I said that to you. To me, it's like, it didn't feel right. I don't want to be that person. So I made amends. And then I started realizing I made amends a little bit, a lot more. Okay, that didn't feel good to try to always have to be making amends. Seriously, I didn't go into shame. I didn't go into guilt. I looked at the fear and said, no. So I didn't have to, moving forward, have to make amends all the time. Why don't I watch what I say? And what I mean by that is, what I did is I started to listen to what I wanted to say in my head. How did it feel? Was it going to hurt that person? Was it going to have an effect? Did it make me feel less than? Or was I going to be mean when I said it? Was I going to have to make amends when I said this? I started to not let everything just fall out of my mouth, unfiltered. I have a right to say whatever I want. I realized I started to feel what I was going to say before I said it. Because I was tired of making amends. I would say I'm sorry. I would make amends so that I could clean up that energy, trying not to repeat it. But for me, it was even a moment of becoming present, watching someone in a situation, an event, a person. And I even remember testing myself, going, okay, I'm going to wait 3 days, 2 or 3 days, to see where this anger's at. See if is it mine? Do I need to approach this person? Did they hurt me? Did it bother me? But I waited 2 or 3 days even after realizing they pissed me off. I didn't like this situation. But I would wait and see if it was even necessary to communicate anything to someone. Maybe it was just a trigger, a pattern from my old life. When I waited the 2 or 3 days, I realized that the anger was a trigger. There was pain behind that anger. And sometimes when I was in a relationship, I didn't need to express the anger. I realized that the pain or the reason would show up of why I was angry. Was it hurt? Something hurt me. Was it pain? What was really behind that anger? That outburst that I used to do, and then I'd have to make amends. Oh, so I started to watch this pattern and giving myself time not to be in shame, not to be in guilt, but to watch and see what was behind these feelings allowed me to stop having to say I'm sorry, which I used to do a lot. Like I said, oh my goodness, it was such a pattern with me. So I started to give myself time and watch. And the amends started. I didn't have to say I'm sorry all the time. And then, like I said, sometimes I had to look at myself and say, where is this pain coming from? What is it truly representing? Has it to do with this person? Has it to do with this event? Sometimes it wasn't. It was because I felt less than. It's because the way I was raised, I felt small. I didn't have a voice. I wasn't validated. No one really listened to me. So we play out a pattern in this holding on to this fear, holding on to this shame, holding on to this guilt of nope, doesn't matter what's going on. I'm going to create myself a platform where I'm heard. Yes, that gets us to a place of using our voice, but the clarity is not necessarily there. We're still lashing out. We're still blaming. We're still putting it on others. So to not stay in that place of fear is to watch, is to listen to ourselves and know where this is coming from. Do not keep yourself in fear. Do not play small. Look at yourself. Validate what you're feeling. Look at why, where, and see if it's something you have to heal in yourself. Honor that part in you, but get into that bigness. Step into it and know that maybe it's just something that I need to heal within myself. When you see it, when you honor it, when you know where it's come from, and then look at yourself and say, I thank you for this knowing. I thank you for this experience. Thank you for helping me to remember where the root of this is, and then release it when you're ready. Don't keep yourself in fear. Don't play small. Set yourself for a platform for yourself. Rage it out. Yell it out. Give yourself that right to express it in your own presence, in your own place. Get it out. You have to get it out sometimes. I've had to do that myself. But also know that after this gets out, after this outburst, after this expression, where is it that this comes from? It may not even be yours. It could have been something that was done to you as a child. A perfect example of raging, which I love to share, is I had a son that died June the 2nd, 1985. I was so angry that this child was taken from me that I remember I was in a relationship one time. I remember thinking I'm going to share to him how I got rid of this rage, this anger, this frustration. One night I was standing in my own privacy, and I remember back then I knew there was a God. I knew there was a greater than me. There was a source. And I knew that I needed to rage. And if I raged to that energy, to God, he would understand, he would forgive, because he wouldn't judge me. So I started to rage. I was angry. I'd yell at him about, how dare you take this child? Why did you take this child from me? And I did this 2, 3, 4 different times in this experience of pain. But when I shared this with this gentleman, he kind of looked at me and said, that's a bit of blasphemy, don't you think? That you have a right to be angry and yell at God? And I said, no. What better place? What better acceptance? What better place of forgiveness? Because I knew my God would not hold it against me. But I had to get it out. I had to look to the sky. I had to look to where I believed that energy was at the time, and I had to rage. I had to get it off of me. I couldn't manage it. I couldn't let it wound me. I couldn't let it hurt me anymore. I had to rage it off. And who better, or where that place of source, what better place to do that to? Because they can filter it. I knew that God and source would transform my rage, would transform my pain when I could not. Anything that goes to source, anything that goes back to God, anything that goes back to the beginning is all transformed in the light of love. And I knew that. So for me, yeah, I raged. I let it off. Some people, Louise Hayes shares this little pattern of when there is frustration in her life, or there's a place sometimes if we don't know how to get through this or get this off, or what's going on? Why am I blocked? It's not to stay in the fear of this. She takes out pillows and she will start to hit pillows. She'll hit and hit and hit and hit, because sometimes the body is blocked. There's this place of fear. What am I feeling? Why am I feeling it? What's going on? So she would hit these pillows until she exhausted her body, herself, and then the truth would show up. When I raged and I threw this anger and this pain at God, at source, I remember I started to see the truth. I started to feel the pain, even now. So I realized that there was pain in losing my child. And then I had to look at why. Why is there pain? Well, I lost a love. I lost the energy and the love of a child. But I also had to look at the guilt. I had shame because my son died. He was 7 months. He was delivered at 7 months. He was premature. His upper respiratory system was very weak. And the shame was that I could not hold him for the complete time that he needed to grow in my womb. I also had a skin growing down the middle of my uterus. So what had happened was he ran out of room. And so when he felt the room, oh my God, can't expand the room, it's time to come out. There was shame that my body was not right to where I could not honor him his 9 months. There was a lot of shame in that for a long time, that my body wasn't what it was supposed to be. My body wasn't right. It wasn't good enough. It wasn't strong enough. It wasn't what it needed to be to give my son what he needed to grow in a healthy 9-month-old baby. I dealt with that shame. But the fear to even voice it when I was going through the process, the fear of, oh my God, I can't voice that. I can't say that. To share fear, our biology believes that it will amplify, it will get worse, and people will see us as ugly, not good enough, There's this pattern we get into of, don't talk about your fear, don't talk about your pain. It will get bigger. People will see you. Oh my God. In reality, it's the opposite. Once we start to share our fear, share our pain, share our shame, it's like God is watching. It transforms. It transforms into love. And this energy that's bigger than ourselves has an ability to hold us in love and let us heal. So it's a powerful place to be. It's a difficult one because there's this concept again that we come out of eons and eons of, oh no, don't talk about it. Oh my God, you can't talk about it. Put the skeletons in the closet. Put them back in the closet. Keep it there. It's playing small. And that's where we've been for many, many eons, coming out of the dark. So do not keep yourself in fear. Share your fear. Communicate your fear and grow. This I guarantee you will happen because I did. So I hope you've enjoyed the show. Reach out, share your stories, share your experiences. I would love to hear from you. I have the new website, which I'm advertising right there. Oh, wrong finger, can you see it? New website. Share to the email, the new email. I would love to hear your story.